this thing? There we go. Dudes, Safari Pedal, they just dropped a cool plugin. It's called the Pixel Cat. It's been pixeling my sounds lately. And then, did I mention Bit Crusher? Did I mention Spring Reverb? I like that Spring Reverb. I've just been like in a pixel mood lately. That's all I'm trying to say. So let's jump into Pro Tools. So yeah, this is the Pixel Cat. It is a bit crushing, pixelating plugin. That's like, that's like the best way I can explain it pretty much. You can see we have a Spring Reverb, which we will be in fact using. It sounds really good. I'm a fan of Spring Reverb, so I was pretty excited to see that they added this. Obviously, you have your bit knob, which you get to choose your bits, you know what I'm saying? And then you have your rate knob, which we'll check out in a second, which is it's cool. This is a cool plugin. And then after that, we have a drive knob, which I'm not utilizing. It does sound great, but for this snare, and I'll show you why I didn't use it. That's also available, as you can see. And then we have a tone knob, darkening, lighting up your sound. Again, I'm not using the tone knob as well, and I'll explain why. And then you have your auto gain, input, output, and then your typical menu bar at the top. And we have a little bit of blend going on, I think, yeah, right under 50%, but let's go through it. So I have this track that I've just been cooking up, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of got, I guess, maybe I was coming out of a Halloween kind of vibe. We'll listen. I like to do these little warm-ups. I'll just make like a beat for like 10 minutes or something like that. Let's see what we got cooking. So yeah, little spooky beat, I guess we can say. It's kind of funny listening back now. But anyways, let's solo up the snare. And as you can see, this is where I'm utilizing the Pixel Cat. And this is where I think, honestly, it worked the best for me. It just really, really like reshaped, and I don't know, it just fit the vibe and the tone of the track and what I was going for. I was kind of messing around with it, and I was just like, oh, this actually works. So yeah, copy these settings too. Pause the video, copy these settings, whatever. These are cool. No presets, just straight default and just tweaking it and stuff. Very basic settings, but all right, so this is before the Pixel Cat. Just your typical regular old snare. And then with it, it's got like this pixelating like crack at the end, I guess is how you can explain it. Obviously, that is the Spring Reverb being affected, which I think was, I don't know, it's kind of cool that they added the Spring Reverb. I think it's unique to do a Spring Reverb than something like, I don't know, something like a plate reverb or something pretty and beautiful, like one of those kind of type of reverbs. I feel like Springs can be pretty too, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're a little bit more grittier and a little bit more interesting sounding, I guess is what I would say, which is why I think I enjoy them. But basically what's happening, like if I take out the Spring Reverb, you can hear that the bit crush, is being added to the snare directly. But when we bring in that Spring Reverb, it's letting the original signal of the snare, do its thing, but it's also adding this end cap, I guess, at the very end, this like bit crush whoosh. That's what I thought it was cool. I was just like, I was messing with it and I had everything off. And the way I like to do things, I like to go by each parameter and see what they're doing and stuff, which I'm sure everybody does. But that's what I was doing. And then the last thing, for whatever reason, I went backwards. And the last thing I did was bring in the Spring Reverb. And I was like, oh, that actually sounds like really cool. So it's like almost like, too much in your face without it. It's got no vibe. It just sounds like, your typical snare, basically. It still sounded fine and spooky without it, but it just sounded like a snare that was just punching through. And like, I'm not doing too much variation with the snare, so I did need something to kind of sauce it up without me, actually changing the pattern, because it's just not what I was going for this track. But I was like, I need to do something because it just sounds too sterile right now. And I think with adding the Pixel Cat, it just literally, like I said, it just changed the mood, fits the track a lot better, and it just kind of goes in the direction of where the track is going through. Like whatever feeling I had when I was making this beat, it just, also followed that same direction. And I think obviously like a big thing was this Pixel Cat plugin. Let me solo everything and just go through each parameter. So just dry. Let's start with the drive. I don't have anything on, like I explained. But you know, just smashing the heck out of it. Just driving it. And then obviously, you know, with the tone knob being down, it's not doing anything. But if it were, let's just say like at 0 point, it's just like too bright for the track now, you know what I'm saying? So me naturally, I'm like, let me just have it off. Obviously you can turn it down too and keep it on. Not really going to have an effect on the sound, but just the fact that it's not there, I think was the better direction for this. Like I said, because I'm going for more of a spooky vibe, obviously having that tone knob down or off in the sense, makes the snare, you know, a little bit more darker. And also from a mixing standpoint, it just lets it sit in the track a little bit better, because let's say we were to have some other elements that were brighter or vocals or whatever, it kind of gives room for the elements that do need to poke through and, you know, be a little bit brighter in the track. With the bit and the rate, they kind of, obviously the rate is going to play hand in hand with the entire plugin, but for me, what I was getting was the bit and the rate can obviously play in hand to hand together. But for this, because it's a snare, you're not really going to hear like a huge effect just because it's a quick sound. But we can go ahead and try to, you know, just manipulate these two knobs and, you know, see what's going on. I always like to think with these kind of plugins, especially when it comes to manipulating like the bit rate and stuff of tracks or just sources in general. It just kind of reminds me of, you know, I don't know, like an old cartoon, I guess, if that makes sense. You're kind of just like taking something back in time before everything was 4K, before everything was HD, whatever the case is. So next thing is the spring reverb, which obviously for me, I think was one of, besides the plugin in general being super important, I think the spring reverb was like the cherry on top. Like I said, this was like the last thing I brought in because I wanted to see what everything else was doing. And I was like, I know what a spring reverb sounds like. But, you know, whatever they use to model the spring reverb from, it sounds great. But when I brought it in, I was just like, oh, this kind of like changed the sound. This is what I think made the snare stand out and have its place in the track, because I think it's also just turned it into an important element, something that's, you know, I always like to think or tell people when I'm, you know, producing or thinking to myself that like there needs to be some sort of, there's always an iconic sound, I think, in a good production, a sound, you know, that people can remember when a certain song is on, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. That's what I always like to think and do as I'm producing or mixing, and just making sure that, you know, what's going to be the iconic sound, or what's going to be that element in the track besides the lyrics and vocals that somebody will remember every time that, you know, song comes on. So for me, I think when I added the spring reverb, I was like, oh, this became my iconic sound in the track, if that makes sense. Basically, for me, what I think is happening and what I'm hearing is, because you have the plugin on and I don't have the spring reverb in yet, obviously the snare directly is being affected by this plugin. But when I bring in the spring, it's like, actually, let's affect the spring, let's affect the reverb and not the actual direct snare itself. I'm not saying technically that's probably what's happening with the plugin, but that is what I'm hearing, and you know, that's what I got from it. And it was almost like, think of it like as I'm adding like pre-delay to something. It was just like, okay, it's letting me have the snare, that dry snare, that direct snare, stand out in the track and be there and be present. But also I'm having like this cool little effect that happens after that initial hit of the snare, if that makes sense. So, you know, if I wanted to do something long like that, you know, that could change the mood of this track too. Or you can have something subtle like this. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what I think made the snare sound the way it does, and why I was like, oh, dang, like this really changed the song for me, or like the production for me. It was just like the snare being such a boring, just typical snare sample. Everybody has this snare sample, you know what I'm saying? It's just such a basic snare to like, and it just, like I said, it fits the mood a little bit better. It adds a little bit of movement to it. It kind of makes you like bob your head a little bit more. At least for me, it did. Just because you have this other thing that your mind or your body can follow in the track. You just have this extra little source of magic that's happening in the snare. When in reality, it's just the Pixel Cat, it's the Pixel Cat doing that. It's the spring reverb, obviously, all these individual bits and pieces that they put into this one plugin, all together, you can make something really cool. So, yeah, I think I made something really cool, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And if you're a bundle owner, Black Friday, you get it for $4.99. If you're not a bundle owner, you get it for $9.99, which I think is a pretty good deal. Otherwise, at the very least, demo it. This was a cool plugin for me. I mean, this is something that it's like very creative. It's such a simple tool. I think that's what Safari Pedals always does great, is that they make such simple tools. You're just like, I don't know, it's like these little Swiss Army knives, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So this is another tool that you can add to your toolbox and just do something quick. And like I said, such simple things that they put into a plugin, but it sparked a new idea. It changed the track for me personally. And yeah, I like this thing. I love this thing. It's awesome. So anyways, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. If you made it this far, check out my links below. I have a Safari Pedal link. I get a little kickback. You get a little love from me. You know what I'm trying to say? And I would appreciate it. Support my channel. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.